Hello and welcome to the Soul Sync podcast. It's me, medium Jason Paul, and it's lovely, as always, to have you here with me. Now, this is a really special conversation. I tell you that from the very get-go. I was sitting here scribbling loads of notes because this next guest just made so many great points. So please let me introduce you to Peter McLachlan. He's a hypnotherapist, a life coach, and kind of a self-proclaimed Western shaman, actually. And what unfolds is a deeply honest exploration into why so many of us can just kind of feel stuck in our lives, and more importantly, how we begin to shift that. So in this conversation, we go beneath the surface. This isn't about surface level mindset hacks or quick fixes. It's about understanding the roots of our patterns, the subconscious beliefs, the emotional imprints, and the stories we've carried, often sometimes without even realizing it. Now, Peter shares powerful insights into how our behavior is being driven unconsciously, and how, until we bring ourselves kind of to be aware of that in the first place, we can find ourselves repeating the same cycles in relationships, in health, in business, and in life. We talk about emotional responsibility, about moving out of blame and into ownership. So many of us, including myself, I give myself such a hard time in life, and we discuss that in this podcast and the patterns that shift that. Now, and it really got me thinking, this conversation, about how fear quietly influences our decisions, how it keeps us small, and how when we learn to sit with it rather than run from it, something begins to shift. So this episode really invites you to look inward, but outward at the same time, to question what's running in the background, to notice what might be holding you back, not from a place of judgment, but from curiosity, because that's really where change begins. Honestly, I think you'll be moved by this conversation. Enjoy. Oh, I'm excited, Peter. Welcome. I'm making you laugh and we haven't even started yet. Welcome to the Soul Sync podcast. It's lovely to have you here.
And it's lovely to be here. Thank you.
Yes, I think we're going to have a lovely conversation. So tell me and the lovely listener all about you, Peter.
Okay, all about me.
Yes, tell us your story. We want to hear.
I have a weird background, and when I saw yours, I thought we were similar in that respect. You said that you used to be a police officer and a magician,
yes,
and a crew member or cabin member or something like that.
Yeah, my background is like the movie Catch Me If You Can. I left school. I was always very entrepreneurial at school, but I left school and then I was very much into performing magic. So I did that and performed in restaurants, everything there and in between. I used to do even nursing homes. You'd be shocked by it. And then, yes, I became cabin crew and then a police officer. And then I started a business and, you know, it's like a bloody roller coaster ride. Okay, but the listener knows about me, so you tell us about you.
Yeah, the reason I brought that up in part is because it reminds me of my story. So I was a volunteer firefighter and an EMT for 15 years in 2 different states, and had a remarkable series of experiences doing that, probably like you being a police officer. And I was an actor in New York City for 10 years. And the same thing, performing on the transatlantic cruises, the Cunard line, spending a lot of time in London, actually, and performing on, in people's houses and on antique trains and in theaters, kind of everywhere. Same sort of thing.
What sort of performer was you?
And I was an actor, so I did soap operas in New York City, and I did a lot of Shakespeare, and I did murder mysteries. That's what the crossings on the old QE2 were all about.
Oh, you was one of the actors on a murder mystery.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was usually the killer, by the way.
What? I could not believe that. Now you say that, I'm seeing another side to you, actually,
yes,
Peter.
The police officer part of you should have detected this already.
Probably says a lot about why I left the police, Peter. But I tell you this, I was very good at finding things, and I would get pieces of evidence that people couldn't believe. But I think it's because I was using my mediumistic faculties there without realising it. People used to say, "Well, where did you get that hunch from?" I'd say, "I don't know. I just thought to look there."
Oh, so that's cool. Have you worked with them since you became a medium?
No, but I actually know a medium that does do a lot of work with the police on missing person inquiries. And we've had people on the show, mediums that get contacted by the police for different cases. And one medium on the show said about where she got a contact from someone that had been tragically murdered and got in touch with the police. So I do hear about it, and I am in those circles, but I'm not doing that myself at the moment.
I understand. Okay.
I've got enough things I'm spinning at the moment, Peter, let alone starting to do detective work on the side.
Sure. I also owned a 50-person security guard business for a while. And then everything changed when I got a simultaneous diagnosis for Lyme disease and leukemia on the same day. When I asked how long they thought I had to live, they said maybe 10 years. And that was 23 years ago. And that really started the odyssey that I call, that led me to wanting to be trained as a hypnotherapist and doing this work.
And what made you decide hypnotherapy?
There were a series of events that seemed at the time like they were disconnected, but that in a moment it all kind of flashed together, and I just knew. So one of the things was, after I sold the security guard business, I owned a small shipping and packing business, and somebody walked in one day, this was in Connecticut, and they said, "I want to ship this package." And it said Hypnotherapy Academy of America, Santa Fe, New Mexico. And I got into this long conversation with this woman. It was probably like an hour. And then I kind of forgot about it. And then a couple other incidents occurred. And then my wife and I were watching the movie The Secret. And halfway through the movie, I just looked at her and I said, "I need to be a hypnotist." And she looked back and she had the same feeling, the same thought. And she said, "Yeah, you do."
Wow. And it came to you both at the same moment?
The same moment. Yep.
And it's interesting that it was The Secret of all things that you was watching.
Yes, it was. And the man who started the Hypnotherapy Academy in New Mexico was a former paramedic. And I was identified heavily with being a first responder then. And the focus was on the adjunctive medical uses of hypnotherapy. And so that was like perfect as well. And when I called them, it was like a Thursday, and they said, the next class starts on Monday and we have one spot left. And I was just, I'm in. And it was true. That was the last spot. So everything seemed to line up in a sort of divine fashion.
I feel like I want to take you back to when you had the diagnosis, because it feels to me like you've already gone through and I'm trying to relate because of my background, because I've changed and done a lot of things and changed my life in many different ways because of certain things that have happened. And when you describe, working in the healthcare profession to then going off to become an actor, to then having this diagnosis, that then it feels like it opens a Pandora's box, and it, was you trying to change a way of thinking of how you was, wanting to heal yourself in some way? What was that? All of that? Talk us through that.
It started with, I went to a hematologist-oncologist after I got the initial diagnosis. And this doctor said, "We don't know what causes this, and we don't know how to cure it." And that was pretty much the moment at which I realized if I was going to have any chance at extending my life, and I had 3 small kids at the time, that I was going to have to dive into this myself. I put the security guard business on hold. I was just sending out invoices and paying payroll. And the rest of the time I was researching. And as I researched, I found myself being drawn from the purely physical cause and effect into the power the mind has over the body. So that was the entry point, let's say. And then when I got to New Mexico, part of the work was choosing one of the instructors to be our hypnotherapist. And then the rest of it, of course, was being a student. And I worked through all kinds of stuff when I was there, emotional stuff from the past. And in a kind of extracurricular way, I teamed up with some other students and we did things outside of class. And unbidden, I didn't ask her to come, but the Virgin Mary came to me when I was doing this circle with 3 other men. And then I had 2 spontaneous past life regressions. And I feel like my life was completely transformed by being there. And I firmly believe that I was meant to do this work and I was on the wrong path. I wasn't walking down the right road, and my soul or my spirit guides or God hit me in the side of the head with a 2x4. That it would take twin diagnoses, one being a potentially fatal diagnosis, in order to get me to pay attention.
Do you know what? As you're saying that, it is reminding me, a lot of different things that I've done in my life, like how I came to awaken, Peter, was because I had believed for years that material success and, whatever would make me happy. And then I chased the career ladder, eventually got to a point where I realized the more money I'm making, I'm bloody miserable. I am so miserable. It was my soul crying out for more. And on this podcast, I hear all different ways that people come to have these moments. Only yesterday, I was talking to someone about a Kundalini awakening and how that's, a vibration. And where does that come from? Is that from the earth sending out, almost like God sending out a trigger to awaken? So you had these experiences. It sounds to me like that was bringing on board or opening up, your faculties as well, because you were starting to see, beings from another dimension. That's a lot going on at once. I have an understanding of hypnotherapy, but I'm not going to say my understanding is great, other than I've spoken about it. I've had some myself in the past. What is it that drew you so much to that? And what do you believe it can actually do to help people?
Well, I find it really interesting that my grandfather, who was kind of like my hero growing up, I really admire. He was a World War II veteran, and he had this, what I thought, beautiful combination of athleticism, strength and athleticism, coupled with a deep, curious, open, intellectual mind. I just love that about him. I still do. And he used to quote the famous French hypnotist from the 1920s, Émile Coué, who had this famous autosuggestion, which was, each day and every way I'm getting better and better. And so I think that was kind of seeded in there somewhere. I also, on the other side of my family, I got to meet my great-great-grandmother who came to the U.S. from Ireland. And through her and through my grandmother, there was this kind of old Gaelic Irish magic that the world is more than what we just can see with our eyes and detect with our other physical senses. So those things were kind of lingering in the background. And then there was the piece of the mind is controlling the body. There was the piece of the allopathy didn't know what the hell was going on. And so they were no use to me. I'm not saying that there isn't anything else. I suspect that there is. This idea of being on the wrong course, of that person wandering into my store to ship a box off to the Hypnotherapy Academy of America that was started by a guy who was an ex-paramedic and who had a medical focus. Like, all of these things to me just feel too perfect to be completely random. And there was
there's something that, and
there was just something
I can relate to that. Yes.
There's just something in that moment that I'm sure a lot of your listeners can relate to, when you just know. I remember people saying,
because of how it makes you feel, I believe.
Sure. And the same thing happened when I met my wife. People would tell me, like my grandmother would say, how would you know when you met the right one? She said, you just know. Just the most unsatisfying answer you could imagine.
But it's actually true.
It's actually true. And when I met her, it was like there was a bell ringing inside of my head. I just knew. There were obstacles and we had to deal with the obstacles, but I knew for the first time in my life. I was, I think, 32 or 33, and I'd never had that experience before, but I heard a bell ringing in my head and I knew she was the one.
Mm. It's even interesting what you say about being on the wrong course, and you kind of what you're getting is slapped in the face by something,
Yep.
God, the power, spirit world, perhaps all three at once. Depends how off course you're going. I know I almost laugh sometimes when I think about my own journey, Peter, in the fact that I'm someone where I'm almost demanding from the spirit world that they slap me in the face. Sometimes I'm given signs to do things, and I almost feel like, no, that's not enough. I want to be slapped in the face even more. And I think, why will you not accept the help, at times when I'm derailing? But there is something in that, if you were going very off course in your life, I've heard stories of where it hits like that, and you can't ignore it. It's life-changing, and it acts as a catalyst moment, doesn't it?
Yes. Yeah, for sure. For sure. And it points out to me how many signs I was ignoring prior to getting, metaphorically hit in the head with a spiritual 2x4. And that even after that, I'm sad to say, I had to have another experience, another spiritual 2x4 to really get me to pay attention. I had another experience beyond that. So that was like a near drowning experience that we can go into if you want. But there was another time in 2011 when I was having a difficult time in my personal life. And I asked my spirit guides to show me. I said, is there an animal that represents what I'm going through right now? And I had in my mind that I was going to see some badass jungle cat, like a leopard or a cougar or a panther or a tiger or a lion. That's what I had in mind that I wanted. And what they showed me was a frog about jumping along. And mentally, I pushed the frog out of the way and I resettled myself. I took in a deep breath and I said, okay, I'm ready. Is there an animal that represents what I'm going through right now? And they showed the frog.
What do you think that was trying to show you in that moment on reflection, Peter?
Well, I asked them, I said, okay, tell me what the meaning of the frog is. And they said, this pain you're going through represents a spiritual leap forward. That was the instant answer that they gave me after I tried to push it away. So clearly, I've had an issue with ego, with pride, whatever, that has a lot of experience with ignoring signs in the past and wanting things to be a certain way that's aligned to my will force or my ego. And these various lessons have helped me to perhaps get that hubris under control to a degree and the will force under control, and also to get on the path that I believe I was supposed to be on probably earlier.
And what do you believe that path is?
I think it's basically call it the spirit path, the path of the spirit. And I don't even know what the right word is. I call myself a hypnotherapist and a life coach, but honestly, I feel like I'm more like a Western shaman or something. Because when I work with people, I take Einstein's dictum to heart that if you want to solve a problem, you can't solve it at the level at which it was created. You have to go up a level. And for me, that's to go to the spiritual level. And a lot of what I do are regression. So regression to an earlier time in this life, a past life regression, a spiritual regression, meeting your spirit guide, getting a gift from your spirit guide, understanding what the meaning of the gift is. What is your purpose in this life? How many lifetimes have you worked on it? Do you have soul contracts with the people with whom you're struggling? This sort of thing.
Well, I even want to ask about that because that's so interesting. This is the thing with this podcast. You can go down so many rabbit holes. You really can. Past life regressions. You mentioned there that, people are coming to you. I still even want to ask about the hypnotherapy, but like you said, you are a Western shaman. But I can understand because problems are, you can't just put things there and there. It's, sometimes a lot more tangled. That's a very good way of putting it, isn't it, Pete? You can tell I work in the profession. But I guess I want to delve into some of this because we're all struggling with ego, pride, and that's just the start. All sorts of things in our lives, aren't we?
Well, sure, for sure. And the thing about hypnosis, to me, the hypnosis is a tool. Neurolinguistic programming is a tool. Havening is a tool. EMDR is a tool. The idea of being a shaman is like saying carpenter, and hypnosis is like saying circular saw or hammer.
Yes.
And people really, I think, ultimately care about the outcome. They're feeling some pain, or they're getting blocked, and they want to overcome that. And I don't think they really care at the end of the day what tool is being used, as long as they understand that it's not going to harm them.
So what are the typical issues that you see that people come to you with?
Well, over the 20 years I've been doing this, I've come up with this idea that there's basically 3 buckets in life that you could be struggling with. And one of them is health. It's mental, physical health. The second one is money, finance, purpose, work, business. And then the third one is relationship. And that could be, it's usually the primary kind of romantic relationship, but it could be with a child, it could be with a parent, it could be with, say, a friend or something. But those are the 3 areas. And I've been told by marketing people I should focus on one because it's easier to sell that, like just focus on weight loss, And every time I try to do this.
Oh, well, there's a lot to be said in business about having a niche. I've been saying that recently.
Well, yes, but it fails miserably for me every single time because I feel like I keep getting pulled into, no, it's not about the specific problem. It's how we're solving all kinds of problems. And I can't imagine saying no to somebody who's struggling in their relationship any more than I could say no to somebody who's struggling with their weight, or somebody who has horrible anxiety, or somebody who's suffering from grief due to the loss of a loved one. These are all things that I deal with all the time.
Yes. So people come to you with their problems, or perhaps they haven't even identified what the block is. And for instance, Peter, if I was to come to you as a man who's been single now for 6 years, where is my partner? I'm sitting here waiting. How do you diagnose that? How do you know if the problem's in this world or the next, or back in a previous life?
Okay, so the first way to answer that is, again, with that concept of simplifying. Everything, in my opinion, comes back to the autonomic nervous system. Autonomic, for your listeners, just means automatic. This is what's running everything about your body, from its temperature to breathing to your immune system, your endocrine system, your digestive system. It's all being run by your autonomic nervous system. And when you get triggered, this is a current phrase that we use, it means that you have been triggered into a fight or flight response. And that's one of 2 options of the autonomic nervous system. If you're not fight or flight, you're rest and digest. That's it. There's no third choice. And so if the first thing I want to know is, because the subconscious has no concept of time, because its job is to protect you, the first thing with you I would want to know is part of you trying to protect you from being harmed in a relationship? So if you'd had some kind of harm come to you as a result of being in a relationship at any time in the past, it's possible that your subconscious mind has set up a belief is just an idea and an emotion that get married, has set up a belief, like a defensive layer, saying relationships are not safe. That would be the first thing I would be thinking about. I'm not saying that's what's going on for you.
That is actually going on for me, in all honesty. Yes, I have been hurt in relationships. And yes, there is probably some truth in that.
Okay.
Well, not some truth in it. Yes, it's true.
So your body, we've established this before. Like when I knew that my wife was the right one, I could hear a bell ringing in my head. When I knew that I had to be a hypnotist, I could feel it. So your body, I think can all agree, is a feedback mechanism.
Oh.
And in the West, we have become so divorced from our bodies that the only time we're aware of what they're saying to us is at an extreme, either pleasure or pain or fear. But the body is always speaking to you, even subtly. When you go to put something in your mouth, your body's weighing in on that, yes or no. If it's artificial sweetener like aspartame, it's saying no, I guarantee you. If it's like an organic apple, it's saying yes. So I believe, and you may find this interesting, maybe you believe it too, that everybody has these psychic abilities. Everyone.
Yes, I believe that.
Just like everyone has the ability to throw a ball. But some people can throw a ball 95 miles an hour. And some people top out at 30.
Trust me, if I throw the ball, it's not going very far at this current level of fitness.
You know what I'm saying, right? Like everyone
I know what you're saying, yes.
Ability, and they can get better with practice. But some people probably have more of a God-given gift for taking it all the way to 95.
Yeah, some people are gifted in it. Some people have experiences young. Everyone has the ability, yes. But, you know, if you're not doing anything to develop it, you know.
Sure, then it's going to atrophy. I teach people to use a pendulum. A pendulum is an amplifier of what the body is already saying. So we establish with the client holding the pendulum how it moves for them for yes, how it moves for them for no, and how it moves for them for maybe. So with you, we would do the same thing. And then we would have you ask the question, you holding the pendulum, is my subconscious mind trying to protect me by keeping me out of a relationship? If we got a no, we move on from that. It's going to be something else. If we got a hit, if we got a yes, now the next task is to identify when that protective cordon was created, because it was definitely created by a trauma or something you perceived as such. And then our job would be to go back in time in your mind and heal that trauma, to remove the block.
That's fascinating. So simple, but I've got several pendulums. I've never thought of doing that with one, I tell you. I will be doing that now, though. Interesting, really interesting. So, looking at past life regressions, talk to us about your work. And there's going to be people listening to this going, past life what, Peter? You know, what are one of those?
Okay, so you want to know what it is?
Well, I want to know what it is, and I want to know what it, you know, the things that are coming up in people's past lives and that's affecting them in this life, I guess.
Okay, so the first thing that I would like to have people understand is that if you listen to quantum physicists, they will tell you that time is an illusion created by a planet that is rotating on its own axis and is orbiting the sun. That gives us night and day and the seasons. And you could easily imagine that just outside of that system, how there is no time, which is, as I said before, coincidentally, or maybe not, mirrored by your subconscious mind. Your subconscious has no concept of time. Everything is now. And you know this because if you've ever watched a movie or read a novel or been in love and 4 hours or 2 hours went by like this and it felt to you like 20 minutes, that's because you were fully in the province of your subconscious mind. I would say you were in hypnosis by definition. Because hypnosis is simply a focused state of concentration where selective thinking is employed. So you're so focused on the movie that time ceases to exist. But that also mirrors the quantum reality of no time. So to your subconscious mind, there really is no past lifetime. There really is no, oh, that happened 30 years ago. And if you think about how PTSD works, it doesn't matter how much time passes. It doesn't matter if the veteran is 15 years away from Fallujah, away from an IED blast, is not wearing the uniform anymore. You know, it lives 5,000 miles away from that location. It doesn't matter. They hear a noise, they wake up in the middle of the night, they hear a tone of voice, and their body is going to respond as if their life is in danger. Because to the subconscious, it is. That's the first thing I want to say.
It's so interesting, the way you explain that. I've never even thought of it like that, to be quite honest with you. The way you even threw in the world there and the way it's rotated. Well, yes, it is just time doesn't exist, but to put it into that concept, you can tell the difference with someone who's really wise on a subject and really knows the subject, because you could put it in a language that you can then explain it to other people. But that, point well made. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So the other thing I would like to say about past lives is that there's plenty of proof out there that they're real. There's plenty of proof that your consciousness survives your physical death. And if you're interested in that, just go onto YouTube and type in near-death experience, or NDE, and you will hear from all kinds of people from all walks of life, including neurosurgeons, police officers, homemakers, surgeons, what that they had a period of consciousness that occurred when they had no heartbeat and no brainwaves. And to me, it's not a big hop, skip, and a jump from your consciousness survives your physical death to you are reincarnated. If we were born into a different culture, we would accept this as a matter of course. And for those of your listeners who may have more than one child, what you will immediately recognize is that each one of them is different. They share the same genetic makeup if you had that child with the same husband or the same wife or partner, whatever. Maybe they ate the same food. They grew up in the same environment. But they came in different, with different interests, different fears. And I say, this is all coming from a past life. We're all bringing stuff with us. You brought your skills, Jason, with you, probably from another lifetime, as have I.
It's very interesting the way you explain it. And yes, when you're born, you have a personality. Where does that come from, that non-physical bit? Because that is the essence of you. And, I guess when you go back to being a child, that's, what we try to do, work with the inner child, isn't it? And all of that, because we're trying to be who we truly are.
Correct. And if you can imagine that concept of inner child and just extend it to a 42-year-old version of you who was executed in the Reign of Terror in France in the 1700s. And now you're afraid of speaking in public. And you have no clue why. But you went through a traumatic experience where you were standing on a stage, in quotation marks, in front of a bunch of people, an audience. And now when you're in that same situation, your subconscious mind remembers. And it feeds it back through to you with a feeling of fear. Your heart's pounding, and you think it's just because a camera's focused at you or because you're standing behind a lectern. No, there's a reason for this. I think the magical thinking is a problem just appears out of nowhere with no root cause. I think that is magical thinking. How come a person has cancer, doctor? I don't know, just some people are unlucky. Come on.
Yeah, well, I think there's much more to this. I think our path is already sketched out. It's how I look back at my life now, the older I get, and I start to think, this just hasn't happened all by chance, the way my life has become how it is now. Things landing in this place and this place. And, even recently after the passing of my father, I looked back and I thought the timing and what I felt on the run up. And, I'm ever more looking at my life thinking, that the body and the eyes fool us more than they show us the real reality of what it is that we are.
And never more so in human history than now with AI.
Why so? Because a lot of people listening to this are going to be thinking, yes, AI, tell us more.
Well, you can't really distinguish now, and you certainly won't be able to in 6 months or in a year, between something that was generated by AI and something that was captured by a camera faithfully by a human being. So how do you trust your eyes? How do we trust our eyes moving forward? If you can capture someone's speech so it sounds like them, if you can capture their image so it looks like them, if you can create a scene with explosions and buildings falling down and everything else, and just tell people, yeah, that's what happened. Like, how would you know?
Well, yeah, it's almost like we need to start, if you're not, start getting in touch with your, the way you feel more than ever before, because, you're right. You can't trust what you see. And, that's why I try and stay off of social media and things like that, because, for that very reason.
And even if you could completely trust everything that you see on your screens with your eyeballs and your ears, if you've ever I got really interested in this, and the question I wanted to know was, what percentage of the light spectrum is made up of visible light? In other words, what percentage of the light spectrum can we see with these eyeballs? The answer, what do you think the answer is?
I think the answer is going to be not even 1%.
Correct. It's even a lot smaller than that. It's 0.0035.
Oh, blimey, that is low, isn't it?
And we have a statement saying, seeing is believing.
Yeah. Well, you make that point very well, because I have been saying recently that the eyes fool us, but I wouldn't. You asked me that question again, I wouldn't have considered it, but I knew it was going to be low, but not that low.
And if that's the case, then and we've also established about how AI can fool our physical senses, and we'll get perfect at it over the next whatever short period of time.
Yeah.
Then don't we go back to either we're in person or we're accessing truth on the inside? Just like when I heard that bell ringing when I met my wife, just like when I knew I needed to be a hypnotist, just like other people have known things and they don't know how they knew it.
I could listen to you for ages, just talk about all these different concepts. You have a very good way of explaining things. I could tell it's from a path very well trodden. That I often think to myself when I look at plants, how do you know that the green that you see is the green that you see? How do you even know that green is green? It's, you start asking yourself all these sorts of questions, and, I always want to be curious, but I actually think that think that we will never know the magnitude, and we will never even come close to knowing the magnitude of what it is that we are a part of. But, I'm determined to try and find out. That's it. It just draws me in. I think once awoken, once curious, you're in, because, the more I know and learn, the more I realize I don't know at the same time, But there we go. So tell us, I want to just ask, so people come to you, they have hypnosis. What are the top things that you are seeing that people, you describe the categories, but I guess I want to just understand in the time that we have left, how people can help themselves. You've mentioned about the pendulum. That's, a very good exercise, but how can people help, they could have things going on in all lives now, couldn't they? How can people help themselves to live a better life, from your opinion, from what you're seeing and, all of your knowledge?
I think it starts with philosophy, honestly, and the simpler, the better. And that living by certain principles that you believe in, I think makes life a lot easier to lead. So, for example, when I was diagnosed with Lyme disease and leukemia on the same day, I was in denial immediately, taking more tests. Tests came back with the same results. And then I went into some serious anger, the why me kind of thing, real serious anger, pounding on the steering wheel anger, angry at other people that were, obese or something, eating an ice cream cone. And I don't know that person, maybe they have cancer, but I assumed they didn't, and it was unfair because they did, and where I am now after many years and a lot of work is when I feel pain, physical pain, emotional pain, psychological pain, spiritual pain, when I feel pain, my philosophy is it's there for a reason. It's trying to get my attention. It's not someone or God or messing with me. It's trying to teach me something. And the sooner I can get the message, the sooner I can get out of the pain. And this simple way of thinking about one's life immediately, in the moment even, can bring a kind of calm and peace that otherwise you wouldn't have. It allows your thinking to go back to your prefrontal cortex from your lizard brain, which is only concerned with survival. And this thinking over here, along with creative thinking, can help you solve this problem or dilemma. And when you learn what the pain is trying to teach you, that's also helping you too, because now you don't necessarily have to repeat it. So I feel like that philosophical precept is enormous. Another one that I live by is your subconscious mind is about 95% of your brain's processing power. It runs your autonomic nervous system, as I said before. It's running all the patterns, the good ones, which is most of them, and the bad ones that keep producing the same results over and over again. And the mentality of your subconscious is literal. It's like you're walking around holding the hand of your 4-year-old self all the time. And he or she believes everything you say. If you call yourself an asshole, if you say you're unlucky, if you say that you're cursed or whatever it is, that 4-year-old, very powerful one, will start to believe it. And that belief will turn into physical reality. So there's a book called The 4 Agreements, and one of the 4 agreements is be impeccable with your word and to recognize that your words have immense power and to start cleaning up how you speak about yourself, to start cleaning up how you speak about others, including your children. I had a client who was a psychologist who, in a kind of sarcastic way, when I first started working with this person, was calling her children like these little assholes. She's programming herself and probably them, because most communication is nonverbal. Most communication, this is the realm of the actor, by the way, is what the body is doing and what the vocal tone, cadence, pitch, volume, silence, timbre, all of it is communicating meaning. You know, I can say, have a nice day in a way that would make you want to slap me.
Oh, yeah. Do you know what? I train people like that in my sales day job. I say tone is everything to people in their early 20s. It is. And it's a vibration. You know, it's not just in the words. You could say, I saw something online a little while ago with Tom Hanks doing an acting thing where he would say the same line all these different ways. And it's very true.
Yes. Right. And so we are programming ourselves all the time. We are also influencing people around us by the words we speak and how we speak those words. And this is particularly important for people in any kind of leadership role, whether it's leadership in the business working world or it's leadership in your home, like if you have children. You know, so she was walking around with this thing in her head. And when I talked about it and described it of how the subconscious receives it and how it's communicated, she was like, oh my God. And she just dropped it.
I bet she did.
She did. But these are so many things that happen unconsciously.
Yeah, you don't think it. Well, it's everything. Thought is everything, isn't it? You know.
Right. So that's why I'm starting at a, let's call it at a more of a macro or a higher level and trying to make it really, really simple. You know, if you take on the philosophy that everything happens for a reason, and it's in particular, even the bad things are, and I'm speaking as somebody who's diagnosed with leukemia, right? I'm not standing on an ivory tower. The things are happening for a reason. The philosophy alone, taking that idea on and getting curious about it, will calm you down immediately, make you more able to deal with whatever that is. And you will learn something from it. And that's a great, I think, piece of philosophy with which to live your life. And then the next one is the be impeccable with your word, because you are your greatest, most powerful hypnotist, not me. It's you followed by the television or followed by social media. And P.S., when people are watching television or doom scrolling, they are by definition in hypnosis.
Well, yes, they are. I guess they're absorbed in what it is that they're focused on, aren't they?
Yes, and they're watching a flickering image at a fixed distance, staring at it. They're narrowing their focus. And this is
You're
one of the
making me not
reasons
want to
why.
turn my TV on tonight. I'm a bit scared now of the. Well, I suppose it's. But if you think about it, if you're watching the news and negative things all the time, like I used to say to my dad before he passed away, you know, stop watching the news as long as you do, just having it on all the time because it's just negative frequency, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. And the powers that be know this.
Well, they do. We could probably do another hour just on that. Yes, but do you know what? You couldn't have got more value into this episode if you tried. You've got so many pearls of wisdom there.
Can I say one more thing, Jason?
Oh, well, I was going to ask you to leave us with a final thought or two. So, yes, please do.
Okay, so to follow up on what people can do, the third thing I would suggest is, I have it. You can feel free to use mine. Mine is totally free on YouTube. Is listen to affirmations or hypnotic suggestions, including subliminal. So I create subliminal or sub-audible tracks. So all you hear consciously is, say, the sound of waves crashing or the sound of rain or the sound of music. But masked right behind that are the words. So you can listen to this while you're sleeping.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I've heard about these, and it's interesting. Why do they work?
Because we're told, like if you look into this, we're told our conscious mind can process something like 16 bits of data per second. And the subconscious mind is like 1 million bits of data per second.
Yeah.
When you walk into a room, your subconscious, through your 5 senses, and maybe more, is picking up millions of bits of data from outside and from the inside. And your conscious mind is missing almost everything. I don't know if you've seen, or maybe some of your viewers have seen, there's a video where they're asking you to do something, to focus on something that's happening on the screen. And there are these groups of people that come on and they're doing these different things, bouncing basketball or something like that. And you're kind of fixated watching these people bouncing the basketball because I think they're asking you how many times does the ball bounce or how many people are there. But there's like a guy in a gorilla suit that just walks through the back. And most of us completely miss that consciously. Subconsciously, we're picking it up. And you as a magician know this. This is what misdirection.
Well, yes, it's misdirection. Yes, it's my specialist subject.
Correct. So what I'm going to say to you is they're missing it consciously. They're not missing it subconsciously. You know, if a hypnotist in a stage show suggests to a subject that they can't remember their name when they snap their fingers, they still know their name, but they believe that they don't know their name, and so they can't find it. So the third thing I'm saying is find someone that you trust that creates this kind of content and start using it if you want to lose weight, if you don't want to have an anger problem anymore, if you want to heal your inner child. You know, you can do stuff while you're sleeping or while you're working on your computer. You can have it playing in the background. You know, if you want to get better at earning money, play a wealth and abundance track in the background because it will go to work on your subconscious mind. Now, this is not necessarily going to deal with any blocks you may have, but you're really putting thousands and hundreds of thousands of seeds in your subconscious mind, some of which will grow and germinate, particularly if you keep doing it.
Well, yeah, and even the act of listening to them is probably going to show the block up, you know, so it's doing something, even if it's not, you know, if you do have to block it, you know, highlight it to you, I guess.
That's an excellent point. The most popular videos on my YouTube channel are around weight loss. That's just how it's worked out. And I have one video that has 3.5 million views, another one with like 2 million, another with 1 million. So I have lots of comments. And these are all subliminal. And it's astonishing how many people report that they've lost all this weight just by putting this on at night and, you know, going to sleep.
What's your YouTube channel? Because there's going to be people here. I'll put it in the description as well.
It's Blue Sky Hypnosis.
And that's also your website, so that's very handy, isn't it?
It's very easy, yes.
Do you know what? I've really enjoyed the conversation. I think that you've left us with a lot of so many pearls of gold there. I keep saying wanted to pearls of gold, nuggets of gold. And do you know what? I'm going to check your YouTube channel out myself because I slipped into bad habits. I used to listen to a lot of subliminals and you've put them back on my radar. So thank you for that, Peter. And thank you for coming on to the Soul Sync. It's been lovely to have you on.
My pleasure to be here.
There was certainly some food for thought on that one. I'll have to listen to that conversation all over again to digest that because it really got me thinking. I'm definitely going to start doing more of the affirmations. I'm going to get onto his YouTube channel because I used to do them quite a lot actually, alongside the morphic fields, which I've just started getting back into. If you go to Morpheus Fields on YouTube, they're absolutely amazing. You kind of can use them to reprogram your energy essentially, and you can manifest all sorts of things with them. I'm doing a rubbish job at explaining those, aren't I? But honestly, it made me really think about our potential that we have, and we honestly, we are unlimited in our potential, in what we can do in our lives. It's our thoughts that can really stop us from doing that. So I'll leave you on that. Until next time, lots of love.